So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you about timeline jumping. And I feel like I've been having this conversation with so many people.
Really?
Yeah, because oftentimes, especially when I start a reading off, I always have to lead with like, hey, everything I say, but also any other psychic healer or whatnot, whatever they say, you have to lead with a grain of salt because not anyone can really predict how your life is going to pan out. And I know you've had psychic readings where some people are so spot on and then other things they say just completely don't pan out. And likewise for me too, like I've had that happen. And so it's like understanding why does that happen? And we've talked extensively about the different theories and our thoughts and notions about how is it that sometimes you can really accurately predict what's going to happen and why is it sometimes that it really doesn't pan out at all?
Well, I think there's also a couple like different things you have to think about too. It's like, how much do you think is destiny and like has to happen?
Yeah.
Versus how much is kind of like up to chance, so to speak, right? Like, I think that there are certain fated events in our lives, but I think there are also things that it's like different paths, right? Different ways to get there.
And would you say that, and what I always tell clients is that at any moment, at any time, and time is like in itself such an interesting concept because the way we perceive it is not accurately how it really goes down. But at any second, any moment, you have all these different doors of opportunities, different timelines in front of you. And at any second and any moment, you could pick a path that completely shifts the energy and shifts the road that you essentially travel down. And that's kind of what I wanted to really talk to you about and explore for people that just don't really understand that concept of like, everything could have been going completely right in one direction. And within a second, all of a sudden you feel a shift or there is a shift. Like, what is that?
I feel like it'd be easier if we had an example. Like, what's like an example that you can think of?
Well, off the top of my head, and this is just like a personal thing, but
Okay.
which are the best examples. But you know, there was a person that I was really interested in seeing and I had a connection with.
Yeah.
You know who I'm talking about. And it's interesting because we pulled cards on this person like multiple times. Like,
Hey, didn't you talk to a psychic about them too?
Yes. I talked to a psychic about
them.
them.
The psychic did kind of call this.
Yes. And I intuitively kind of knew the path it was going down, but it was interesting because before I even talked to the psychic, before I really met this person, it was like things were looking really promising, were really positive. And so, but then and it's interesting because then after certain events unfolded, I pulled cards and it was like, nope, it's done. It's really done. And so...
Oh, so you're saying that like in the beginning, it looked promising and then something shifted.
Yes.
And in that, it like shifted this timeline where there was a timeline in existence where you and this person actually met up and were maybe even dating.
Yes.
But then it's like you got on a different path because of like external circumstances.
Yeah. External, internal, whatnot. And
do you want to talk about why?
Well, let's not get into
maybe not.
Let's not get into the nitty-gritty details, but I think it's a great example in showing that like I don't know what could have shifted on that person's end, but like we also have to take into account that it's not just you pulling, the weight on how things unfold. Like other people's actions, reactions, their energy is going to cause a shift in that timeline, whether you want it or not.
Yeah. I mean, well, the thing is, we're all connected to one another, right? It's like the web, and all of our actions are kind of reverberating out, and we're all kind of impacting each other in these subtle ways. And I think when it comes to timelines or even psychic readings, it's like you could go see a psychic, and in that moment on that day, whatever information they're giving to you is accurate. Like, let's say you're going because you're interested in what's going on in your like romantic relationship. And maybe it's like on the rocks, right? So you're like, oh my God, I need help. I think that's why most people go to psychics, because they want guidance and love. And so you go to the psychic and you're like, hey, I'm struggling with my love life. Like, what's going to happen? And in that moment, they're like, oh, it's probably not going to work out, because maybe that's where you guys are at, right? But what I think is interesting is that there are possibilities that have nothing to do with those two people that are in the relationship, right? So like this person that you're in a relationship with, that you're getting the psychic reading about, something could happen with one of their family members. And their timeline shifts suddenly.
Yeah.
And then that shifts your partner's timeline. And then suddenly, like, all the information you got from the psychic has now shifted.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? It's kind of like we're all impacting each other. And so we could be on one road traveling to one destination, and suddenly we're sidetracked by someone else. And then again, our timelines change.
Yeah, totally. And like, I feel like I've experienced that several times. And like, obviously it's interesting to really reflect back in the past to see how things unfolded. And like, this also happens for your career too, because I was really interested in doing this specific accelerator program for my startup. And like, I remember talking to you about it and you're like, oh, the energy feels right. Like, this feels really right. And then I went through several months of major burnout, and you're like, you check back and you're like, something's funk, something's like not right. And so it was really interesting to just observe how like, at one point in time, like, you could really feel so strongly about something, and all these other factors that you have no control over actually end up impacting then, is this really the right pathway for you? Is this really the right road you want to go down? And I do believe that when you get any kind of reading done, psychic, astrology, whatnot, it's important to consider that like that person isn't going to be able to physically live through what you're living through. And that free will has such a big impact on like,
of course,
on that where you end up going.
Yeah. I mean, it's so important to always take anything that's like predictive or that's going to like, I don't know, make what's the word I'm looking for? Like, any predictions you're going to get either from like a psychic or an intuitive or whatever, like, those are always subject to change, because we're always changing. But we also, again, we have free will. Like, I remember one time I went to a psychic and I was feeling a lot of resistance about traveling, and I was going to see my cousin in Germany, and the psychic was like, I don't see you actually going to Germany at all. And her saying that actually prompted me to go home and book my flight right then. Yeah. Right. So it's like, we're making choices and decisions every single day that are contributing to a multitude of timelines that we could be walking, right? Like, there's a timeline where I still live in New York, but I don't live there, right? Or maybe I still live in North Carolina, but here I am in Nashville, Tennessee. And again, it's all like these conscious choices. And I feel like there are just so many roads ahead of us, and we're constantly kind of getting on and getting off them. And that really impacts like the bigger things people are looking to have answered, which are like, who am I going to end up with? Or like, where's my career taking me? Or where am I going to buy a home? That kind of thing. And, when you were talking, it made me really think about when I read in the Vedic timing, like we have certain windows for things like relationship windows, career windows, etc. And I do have a lot of clients that will miss windows, and they like really freak out and struggle with that. And it's interesting to observe that you could move through a certain period and the energy is right, and like the universe, God, whoever you believe in, is trying to really support that specific theme and season of your life. But if you are not ready, and like I feel like I'm personally like, oh my God, this is like me. If you're not energetically ready, there isn't any amount of, magic that's going to bring that
bring you to experience that specific theme and season, whether it's love or career and whatnot. And you definitely were like, I'm like, Sophie, what's going on? Like, you were supposed to meet someone. Like, where is this person? And I remember like you telling me, oh my God, it's because you're so burnt out. Like there's no energy. And I think that oftentimes we get really frustrated with our timelines because everyone's on in such a hurry to get to a certain place. And we forget that like, hey, at any moment at any time, like everything can really shift. And unfortunately, it's not always going to be up to you too to make that like, it's like so many multi-facets that like we have to think about. But like at the end of the day, all you can do is like make sure you're really open and ready for what the universe has planned.
Mm-hmm. But it still is a dance.
Oh, and yeah, totally.
Like, so I remember we were just out, I think last week, and one of my friends messaged me about like dating this new girl, and he wanted me to look into the synastry, and I was like, it's not great just from this perspective. And then he was like, see, this is why I don't like astrology because, it's like I have free will. And if I want to be with this person, I was like, yeah, that's true. Like this is only one part of the picture. And anytime that people are looking at some of these tools as like, the end all be all, it's really not. Like I look at it more as like a jumping off point. So it's like you kind of coming into these windows of love. It's like it's still a choice. And I tell that to people I've worked with too, when they're in a numerological year cycle that's really favorable for love. I'm like, if you want to meet someone, you're going to meet someone. But at the end of the day, like you have to make the conscious decision to do that. Right. And even in the charts, like you can read someone's chart and they have like the best placements for success and money and fame and all these things. Yeah. But it's like, if you aren't every day waking up and like making a conscious decision, like this is what I want and I'm going to go for it, it's not going to happen to you. Like things aren't just like served on a silver platter if you're not like putting the effort forth. And that's the thing. It's like, it's a dance to kind of like figure out what timeline you want to be on, Yeah. I want to go back to the point of like destiny versus free will, because I believe that there are certain moments in your life and there are certain people in your life that are fated and destined, And so it's kind of like, how then would you balance like knowing that like this was a person that you absolutely had to meet in this lifetime. And there's no, like that was a contract that was made between the souls. And also having events like that happen to you too, right? Whether it's like really amazing, wonderful, beautiful events that you experience with joy and happiness, or the opposite, where it's just complete devastation and misery to some degree, right? When you meet certain people. Is that what you're saying?
It could be one or the other.
Are you talking about like breakups here?
But like, it's like, how do you balance that? And I think that what's wrong is us perceiving it in such extremes, like everything's destined, everything's like this, or there's no such thing as that. And like for me, like I always like to really think about destiny versus free will in a balance and a delicate balance.
My friend the other day who's studying Kabbalah, and I've never like actually studied Kabbalah or really looked into it. She was telling me how in Kabbalah, and again, like I haven't studied it. This is what she told me. So I can't like verify this, but she told me that Kabbalah believes that like every single thing is destined, like period. Yeah. Like you come here and this is your, like everything that happens is absolutely your destiny. Like you kind of already have everything mapped out before you get here.
Interesting.
Which was such, like, I've never gone to that extreme in my mind, which was really weird to contemplate. Like, how can that be true? Like, was it destined that I woke up this morning and went to the gym with you? Like, yeah. I don't know. But I think, there have been moments in my life where I wanted to break patterns or habits. And I actively did the opposite of what I would normally do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, remember I did that over the summer?
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to break my avoidant tendencies.
Oh, yes. And you went like the total extreme.
Yeah, I really did. I went extreme on that. And I did actually break a lot of patterns, which was fantastic. But it's kind of like I went and did the absolute opposite of what is normally my behavior. And I guess though you could say that is destined, right? Like maybe I was destined to do that versus like I had the free will.
Yeah.
So I guess it would depend on how each person defines that.
Yeah. I think that that's an interesting concept. And to be honest, I think that there's actually a little bit of comfort and safety in that. But at the same time, like then it begs the question of like, well, then what's the point of like
anything?
And I don't like that.
Well, it's kind of like life. It's like everything matters and nothing matters. You know what I mean? Like there are moments I find myself in a really difficult position, right? And not to sound like morbid or anything like that, but it's like some days I'm like I've been going through a breakup and it's been really, really painful and really hard. And the other day I was so upset about it. And I was just like, at the end of the day, like I'm going to die. You know, it's like, how much is this mattering in the scheme of that? You know what I'm saying? Like in a way that kind of like sets you free. I know it's kind of like a strange thought to have, but sometimes we just get so caught up in things and it's kind of like it does matter tremendously, but at the same time, like, does it? Like we're here for such a short amount of time. Like so many things that I've spent my life really stressed about and really worried about ended up being totally fine. Or there are things I don't even think about now, even like the hardest things I've been through.
Yeah.